Let us waste no time on introductions and get right to painting. Today I have a new way, at least for me, of painting rust. It'll be a bit messy, so I'll work on it first not to ruin any other painted parts. The metallic base got a pinch of brown to make it a bit more interesting, though I believe it made no difference in the end result. While I have talked about painting rust with acrylics in the past, I always like to explore new mediums. So today I'll make use of pigments, which I'll dilute to a wash consistency with a mix of 2 parts distilled water and 1 part isopropyl alcohol. I aimed for a dilution which would run and pull on the recesses, while still leaving a light transparent layer of color over everything else. Once it dries, there is still a bit of shine showing through as I turn the model around, while the recesses look super dry and crusty. I followed it up with a more orangey pigment wash, which I applied more sparingly. Since it didn't make that big of a difference once dry, I added a pinch of yellow pigment to the wash, and while it looks like it's reactivating the one underneath, it didn't affect the finished product. Though it begs the question if we can get a more targeted and precise application by laying down some varnish in between washes. I'll make sure to test it out and provide you with my findings in a future video. With that, I have a convincing rusty surface, to which I always like to add some highlights on the edges. Though in order to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I'll first base coat the gas canister and dry brush everything at the same time, since I also want some metallic edges on it to represent chipped paint. If you're finding the video helpful so far, consider leaving a like, subscribing or sharing it with a friend. And if you're a Trench Crusade fan, comment which faction I should visit next. With the messy washes and dry brushes out of the way, I cleaned off the model by giving its other details their corresponding color. Before showing you how I did the burnt flesh, I'll quickly go over the other 2 remaining details. The crest above the helmet was just a base coat, a wash of brown to make it a bit dirty, and a highlight with a lighter color, placing my brush almost flat against the surface to catch only the raised details. For the black cloak, I actually began with a dark grey, and to highlight I mixed in some pink to make it less boring, and remain within that reddish overall scheme. I went over the folds doing some lines, and as my mix got lighter and lighter I didn't bother with thinner lines, but I changed the direction on them so to end up with a texture finish. Back to dark grey, I applied an even layer of glaze over all of the cloak, to both tune down the highlights as well as blend them a little. This was followed with a targeted wash of black on the recesses. Since nothing is darker than black, it had to be reserved exclusively for the deepest shadows. The end result was still not dark enough for my liking. Just like with the grey, I applied a thin even layer of black glaze to tune everything down a bit more. Finally, for the burnt flesh, it's actually really simple. Over my light skin tone I applied Blood for the Blood God technical paint, though slightly diluted. This will ensure that the deepest recesses will be saturated but the raised details will show through a bit. And I don't mind about the very raised ones, but my aim is to create a clear distinction from the recesses and that area between them and the raised details. That's where I want a bit of variety. To give the arms their charred look, I used charcoal and dry brushed it over the raised details, just being careful not to hit the armor. Thank you for watching the video. While I'll be painting some old world next, there is still more Trench Crusade to come. Of course, making sure the videos are not just a specific paint guide, but something to give you tips you can translate to your everyday painting. So if you're as excited as I am, remember to let me know what faction I should paint next.